It is early morning in Constantinople. The sun has just come up over the water, and the whole city is already awake and moving. Down by the harbor, a fisherman is pulling his boat up onto the stone dock, his nets still wet and heavy with the morning catch. Up the hill from the harbor, the city opens up into a maze of streets and markets. A baker is pulling fresh loaves from his clay oven and stacking them on a wooden shelf outside his door. Further into the city, the streets get wider. The buildings get grander. You're walking on smooth, flat stone now, not dirt. Marble columns line the road on both sides. Government officials in fine robes move between buildings carrying scrolls and documents. Soldiers stand at their posts outside important doorways, helmets and spear tips catching the morning light. And then, at the top of the city, behind its own set of walls, sits the imperial palace. Inside those walls is a different world entirely. Enormous courtyards paved with colored stone. Guards stand every 20 meters. And somewhere in the deepest part of this palace, in a room full of advisors and military commanders, the Emperor of Byzantium is sitting at a table covered in maps. His name is Constantine XI, and the expression on his face is not the expression of a man who is winning. Because outside the walls of this magnificent city, something enormous is getting ready to happen. And Constantine XI knows exactly what it is. This is Constantinople in 1453. The greatest city on the face of the earth. A city that has stood for over 1,000 years, survived every enemy that ever came against it, and produced some of the greatest art, learning, and architecture the world has ever seen. And it is about to face the most dangerous threat in its entire history. Every visual you are watching right now has been rebuilt using advanced AI technology, reconstructing Constantinople exactly as it looked in its final days. And before we go any further, if this is the kind of history you love, subscribe to our channel right now. Every single week, we bring a city or a moment from the past back to life, exactly like this. Hit subscribe and let's go. To understand the Constantinople, first we need to understand the city. The main road running through the city is called the Messe, the middle road. Walk along it on any morning and you pass through every layer of life this city contains. Wealthy merchants discussing business under the covered stone colonnades. Soldiers walking in pairs. Street vendors selling roasted chestnuts and sweet pastries. Scholars carrying manuscripts, heading to the libraries where some of the greatest learning of the medieval world takes place. Pilgrims who have traveled from Russia, Egypt, Persia, and Italy, just to see this city with their own eyes because they have heard about it their entire lives. In the residential neighborhoods off the main road, life moves at a quieter pace. Greek Orthodox families live in houses built tight together with small courtyards inside, where fig trees grow and children play. The smell of garlic and grilled fish drifts through the windows. Craftsmen work in doorways. Women carry water from the fountains. These are the ordinary people of Constantinople, born here, raised here, and who cannot picture living anywhere else. And rising above all of it, visible from every street and every neighborhood, is the Hagia Sophia, the greatest building in the world. It was built in 537 AD, nearly 900 years before the events of this story. And it is still, in 1453, the most breathtaking structure most people who see it have ever encountered in their lives. The dome rises 55 meters above the floor, taller than a 15-story building, ringed at its base by 40 windows that send shafts of light moving slowly across the interior as the sun moves through the sky. The walls inside are covered entirely in mosaics, millions of tiny pieces of gold leaf and colored glass forming images of Christ, the Virgin Mary, emperors and saints, all of them glowing as if lit from behind. When the people of Constantinople need comfort, when they are frightened or grieving or desperate for hope, this is where they come, and very soon they are going to be all three. Constantinople is the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the eastern half of the old Roman Empire that never fell. While Rome itself was taken by foreign armies in 476 AD, this city kept going. The Byzantine emperors called themselves Romans. Their language was Greek. Their faith was Orthodox Christianity. For 1,000 years, this was the most educated, most wealthy, most powerful Christian city in the world. But by 1453, the empire has been slowly falling apart for centuries. Wars, plagues, and the constant loss of territory have reduced what was once a vast empire, spanning 3 continents, to essentially just this city and a handful of small territories nearby. The population has dropped from over 500,000 at its peak to somewhere around 50,000 to 100,000 people. Large areas inside the city walls where buildings once stood are now open fields and gardens. The empire is a shadow of what it was, but the city itself, its buildings, its knowledge, its walls, is still extraordinary. Emperor Constantine XI knows the reality of his situation better than anyone. He has around 7,000 soldiers to defend a city whose walls stretch for miles in every direction. He has been writing desperate letters to the Pope and the kings of Western Europe for years asking for help. Soldiers, ships, money, anything. Western Europe is too busy with its own arguments to respond properly. No real help is coming. Constantine XI is going to have to work with what he has. Now step outside the city for a moment and look at what is approaching from the west. His name is Mehmed II. He is 21 years old. He became Sultan of the Ottoman Empire just 2 years ago, and from the very first day on that throne, taking Constantinople was the only thing he thought about. In early 1453, Mehmed builds a massive fortress on the European shore of the Bosphorus, called Rumeli Hisara, cutting Constantinople off from outside supply and help by sea. He assembles an army of somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000 men. He builds a fleet of ships to blockade the city from the water, and on the 2nd of April 1453, he arrives outside the walls of Constantinople and sets up his enormous camp. Inside the city, the mood changes the moment the Ottoman army appears on the horizon. The busy morning streets are quieter now. People talk in lower voices. Shopkeepers do their business quickly and go home. At night, the city lies still and listens for sounds from beyond the walls. On the 6th of April, the Ottoman cannons fire for the first time. The sound that rolls across Constantinople is unlike anything the people of the city have ever heard in their lives. The pattern of the siege sets itself quickly. Every day before dawn, the cannons start. The sound rolls through every street, every building, every person in the city all day long. Stone balls slam into the walls over and over and over. And every single night, by torchlight, the Byzantine defenders climb down outside the broken sections and repair them. In the evenings, the churches fill completely. The Hagia Sophia is packed every night, people standing shoulder to shoulder in the candlelight, the gold mosaics glowing above them. People who barely attended church before are there every single night now. Mehmed also tries to get his ships into the protected Golden Horn, but the Byzantines have stretched a massive iron chain across the entrance blocking the way. So Mehmed does something extraordinary. He has his ships physically dragged overland, placed on greased wooden rollers and hauled by hundreds of men over a steep hill, and dropped into the Golden Horn on the other side of the chain. One morning, the defenders wake up to find Ottoman ships in waters where no enemy has ever sailed. The city is being squeezed. By mid-May, the walls in the northwest corner near the Blachernae Palace are severely damaged. The repair teams are exhausted. Food is getting short. The expected ships from Venice have not arrived. Hope inside the city is running very thin. Inside the Hagia Sophia, the prayers that night are the longest and the most desperate since the siege began. On the evening of the 28th of May, Constantine XI rides slowly through the streets of his city, past the Hagia Sophia, past the market streets, past the neighborhoods he has known his whole life, stopping to speak to people along the way. Everyone who sees him understands what this ride means. He is saying goodbye. Wave after wave of Ottoman soldiers hit the damaged walls in the darkness. The noise is total. Drums, war cries, cannon fire shaking the ground. A small group of Ottoman soldiers finds a small gate in the wall, the Kirkaporta, that someone has left unlocked. They pour through it into the city. When defenders see Ottoman flags rising on their own walls, the defense falls apart completely. Constantine XI tears off his golden imperial robes so he cannot be recognized and throws himself into the last fighting. He is never seen again. No body is ever confirmed. The last emperor of Byzantium vanishes into the smoke of that final morning. By midday, Mehmed II rides through the gates. He goes straight to the Hagia Sophia, walks through those great doors, looks up at that dome for the first time, orders it converted into a mosque. The cross comes down. The call to prayer rings out inside the Hagia Sophia for the very first time. Constantinople becomes Istanbul. The Byzantine Empire ends after 1,500 years. Scholars fleeing the fallen city carry their books and ancient knowledge into Italy, helping spark the Renaissance, one of the greatest explosions of art and science in human history. The Ottoman Empire, with Istanbul as its capital, becomes one of the most powerful empires the world has ever seen. Subscribe to our channel right now for more history like this every single week. Hit the bell. Drop a comment telling us which city you want us to cover next, and we will see you in the next one.